I thought the motel owner was trying to kill me. I was wrong. He was trying to keep me alive. This happened 2 winters ago when I was driving from Denver to Nashville after a breakup I still don't really like talking about. I had packed everything I owned into the back of my car and decided to make the drive alone. Bad idea. By the second night, I was exhausted, angry, and running mostly on gas station coffee. Somewhere in eastern Oklahoma, a storm rolled in so hard I could barely see the road. Rain was coming sideways. My phone signal kept cutting out, and every few miles the highway lights disappeared completely. I was about to pull over and sleep in my car when I saw a sign through the rain. Vacancy. Under it, in smaller red letters, Willow Rest Motel, next right. I checked Google Maps. Nothing. No motel, no business listing, no reviews, just an empty stretch of highway. That should have been enough for me to keep driving, but I was tired enough to ignore common sense. I took the exit. The road curved behind a line of trees and opened into a small gravel lot. The motel looked like it had been forgotten in the 1980s. 6 rooms, 1 office, a flickering ice machine, and a neon sign buzzing so loudly I could hear it over the rain. There were 3 cars in the lot, an old white van, a black pickup, and a silver sedan with no plates. I parked near the office and ran inside. The lobby smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. Behind the counter stood a man in his late 60s, thin, gray hair, heavy glasses. His name tag said Martin. He looked at me like he had been expecting me. Not happy to see me, not surprised, just expecting me. I asked if he had a room. He stared past me through the window at my car. Then he asked, "Are you alone?" I said yes. He didn't like that answer. He reached under the counter and pulled out an old metal key. Room 4. Then he slid a registration card toward me. No computer, no credit card reader, cash only. I paid him $60. As he handed me the key, he leaned forward and said, "Once you're inside, don't open the door for anyone but me." I laughed a little because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He said it again. "Anyone knocks, you ignore it." Then he pointed to the motel rooms through the rain, especially room 2. I looked out. Room 2 had its curtains open just a few inches. Someone inside was standing in the dark, watching the office. I couldn't see their face, just the shape of a person. I asked Martin what was wrong with room 2. He said, "They ask questions." That was all. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I took the key and ran back through the rain to room 4. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Brown carpet, thin comforter, a TV bolted to the dresser, 1 lamp that flickered before staying on. The lock on the door looked newer than everything else. Deadbolt, chain, and a metal sliding bar that looked like it belonged on a warehouse door. That actually made me feel better. For about 10 minutes. I showered, changed clothes, and sat on the bed eating chips from my bag. The storm got worse. The TV didn't work. My phone had 1 bar. Then I heard footsteps outside. Slow, heavy, passing my door, then stopping. I froze with a chip halfway to my mouth. 3 knocks came from the other side. Soft, polite. I didn't move. A woman's voice said, "Hey, sorry to bother you." She sounded young, maybe my age. "My car won't start. Do you have jumper cables?" I almost answered. Then I remembered Martin's warning. I stayed quiet. The woman knocked again. "I can hear you in there." My stomach tightened. I looked toward the peephole, then stopped myself. I don't know why. Something about her tone changed too fast. It went from friendly to flat in 1 sentence. She waited another few seconds, then said, "You shouldn't trust the old man." After that, The footsteps moved away. I stood there listening until I heard a door open 2 rooms down, room 2. Then silence. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on top of the covers with my shoes still on, staring at the door. Around 1:15 in the morning, the phone in the room rang. It was one of those old beige motel phones. I hadn't even noticed it worked. I picked it up slowly. Martin's voice came through. "Did you open the door?" "No." "Good." Then he said, "Turn off your light." I looked at the lamp beside the bed. "Why?" His voice dropped. "Because they're counting occupied rooms." Before I could ask what that meant, the line clicked dead. And 10 seconds later, someone knocked on my door. 3 times. 3 knocks. Not 2, exactly 3. Every muscle in my body locked up. I stared at the door without making a sound. Another 3 knocks, slower this time. Then a man's voice. "Martin told us you checked in." No response from me. "We're just making sure you're okay." He sounded calm, friendly, the kind of voice you'd trust without thinking. I still said nothing. After a few seconds, he laughed, not loudly, just enough for me to hear it through the door. "He always picks the wrong people." Footsteps moved away. I waited almost a full minute before I allowed myself to breathe again. Then I heard another sound, a lock opening. Not mine, room 3. The door slowly creaked open. Someone stepped outside. I peeked through the tiny gap in the curtains, only an inch, just enough to see the motel walkway. A middle-aged man stood outside room 3. He wore jeans, boots, and a baseball cap. He looked completely ordinary. Across from him stood the man who had knocked on my door. They shook hands. Then both of them looked toward room 2. The door to room 2 opened. The young woman I'd heard earlier stepped outside. She smiled. The 3 of them walked toward the office together. No argument, no panic, just 3 people casually talking. I frowned. If Martin was dangerous, why would they walk toward his office? Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. None of them knocked. Martin opened the office door before they reached it, as if he already knew they were coming. The door closed behind them. 10 minutes passed. Nothing happened. 15 minutes. Still nothing. Finally, the office door opened again. Only 2 people came out, the woman and the man from room 3. The person who had knocked on my door never came back out. I kept watching. The woman smiled, actually smiled. Then she returned to room 2. The man calmly walked back into room 3 like nothing had happened. Where did the 3rd man go? I never saw him leave. Maybe there was another exit. Maybe I missed something. That's what I told myself. Then my phone rang again. I picked it up immediately. "Did anyone leave the office?" Martin asked. "Only 2. Silence. Then he quietly muttered, "That's what I was afraid of." What does that mean? You need to listen carefully. His breathing sounded uneven. They're trying to figure out if you're traveling alone. I am. I know. Another pause. But they don't. I frowned. What are you talking about? They never take people in pairs. The sentence hit me harder than I expected. Take? Before I could ask anything else, the office lights suddenly went out. Martin stopped talking. Then I heard something through the phone. Not words. Glass breaking. The line immediately disconnected. I called back using the room phone. Nothing. Dead line. Outside, the motel became strangely quiet. No rain, no voices, no footsteps, just silence. 5 minutes later, someone began knocking on every room. One knock, pause. One knock, pause. I heard it move from room 1 to room 2 to room 3. Then my door. One knock, silence. No voice this time, only breathing. Whoever was outside stayed there, not moving, not speaking, just breathing. After nearly a minute, they whispered, "He's gone." Another voice answered from farther away, "Then she's ours." I felt my chest tighten. I slowly backed away from the door. That's when my phone vibrated. For 1 second, I thought I had service. It wasn't a call. It was an airdrop request from someone nearby. The sender's name was "Look Under the Bed." I nearly laughed. It had to be a prank. Who sends something like that at 2 in the morning? Then another airdrop appeared. "Don't let them see you reading this." My hands started shaking. I accepted it. A single photo appeared. It clearly had been taken inside my room, from the corner near the ceiling. I was sitting on the bed, holding my phone. The timestamp on the picture was 30 seconds earlier. Someone had taken a picture of me inside my room. I looked around wildly. Smoke detector, mirror, TV, nothing. Then I noticed something else. The angle wasn't from inside the room. It was from outside, through the window. Someone had been standing inches from the glass, watching me. Another airdrop arrived. This one contained only one sentence. "Martin is buying time. Don't waste it." I ran to the bathroom and locked that door too. I didn't know who to believe anymore. The owner, the guests, the anonymous messages. Then I heard a loud crash from outside. A car engine roared to life. Tires spun on wet gravel. I carefully looked through the bathroom window. The old white van was leaving, fast, too fast. It nearly hit the motel sign before disappearing back toward the highway. The black pickup was still there. The silver sedan was still there. But Martin's office was completely dark. Then someone started pounding on my room door, not knocking anymore, pounding. The chair under the handle jumped with every hit. A man yelled, "Open up!" Another voice shouted, "She's still inside!" Then, for the first time all night, I heard Martin scream, and it wasn't from the office. It was coming from underneath the motel. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Martin wasn't screaming from the office. He was screaming from somewhere underneath the building. Then it stopped. Just stopped. The pounding on my door stopped too. Silence. I looked at the clock. 2:07 a.m. It felt like I'd been trapped in that room for an entire night. In reality, I'd only been there a little over 3 hours. Then my phone buzzed again. Another airdrop. This time there wasn't a message, just a blueprint. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. It was a floor plan of the motel. 6 rooms, the office, a maintenance closet, and something that wasn't visible from outside. A long, narrow corridor running underneath every room. One section of the blueprint was circled in red. Room 4. My room. Below it, someone had typed, "They are waiting for you to fall asleep." My heart started racing. I dropped to my knees and pressed my ear against the floor. At first, nothing. Then, very faintly, voices. Not above me, not outside. Underneath me. Someone whispered, "She's still awake." Another voice answered, "Give her another hour." I pulled back so fast I hit my head on the bed frame. They weren't guessing. They knew exactly where I was. They knew I hadn't slept. Another knock. This time, only twice. exactly like Martin had described. I froze. Was it really him? Or had they finally gotten the spare key and learned the signal? Then I heard his voice, quiet, urgent. Open the bathroom window. Not the door, the bathroom window. I hurried into the bathroom. The window was tiny, barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. I unlocked it. Martin was outside, standing in the rain. His face was bleeding. One lens of his glasses was gone. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. "What is happening?" "No time. Come." I hesitated. Every instinct told me this could still be a trap. Martin seemed to read my face. "You've been watching the front. Good. They wanted you to." "What?" "They always keep your attention on the doors." He pointed downward. "The real entrance is underneath." A loud bang echoed from inside my room. The main door had finally burst open. Someone laughed. Another voice said, "Bathroom." Martin grabbed my arm. "Now." I climbed through the window. We crouched beneath it as several flashlights swept through my room. From outside, I could hear them talking. One woman said, "She's gone." A man answered, "She couldn't have gone far." Then someone else said something that made my blood run cold. "Check the drainage tunnel." Martin pulled me behind the building. There, hidden beneath thick weeds and broken concrete, was a rusted metal hatch. He struggled to lift it. The smell that came out made me gag. Damp earth, mold, and something metallic. Blood. We climbed down a narrow ladder into darkness. Martin switched on a tiny flashlight covered with red tape, so the beam stayed dim. Walk where I walk, no matter what you hear. We moved deeper underground. Every motel room had a small crawl space beneath it. Through thin wooden boards above us, I could hear footsteps, voices, moving furniture. They were searching. I whispered, "Who are they?" Martin didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "They're not travelers." "I know that. They've been using this motel for years." "For what?" He stopped walking, then looked directly at me. "People who disappear." I felt my stomach turn. They look for people driving alone. No family, no friends, no one expecting them that night. I thought about my road trip, about not telling anyone exactly where I was stopping, about my dead phone signal. My chest tightened. Martin continued, "They don't force people here. They wait. Storms, flat tires, wrong turns. Then they make you believe I'm the threat." "Why?" "Because frightened people don't call the police. They run." He looked back toward the motel ceiling. "And when they run straight to them." We kept walking until the tunnel opened into a larger underground room. It looked like an old maintenance area. Shelves, rusted tools, broken water heaters. Then I noticed the wall. It was covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Men, women, college students, truck drivers, families. Every picture had a date. Some stretched back more than 20 years. Many had handwritten notes. Traveling alone, no local relatives, out-of-state plates. Near the center of the wall, I found my own picture, the same one that had been airdropped to my phone, printed, already pinned in place. Someone had prepared it before I ever checked in. I stared at it in disbelief. Martin quietly said, "They knew you were coming before you did." "How?" He answered with a question of his own. "Who do you think put that vacancy sign on the highway?" Before I could respond, a loud metallic slam echoed from inside the tunnel. Martin's face changed instantly. "They found the hatch." Heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere behind us. Not one person, several. Flashlights flickered through the darkness. Martin shoved a small revolver in my hands. It looked older than both of us. I only have 2 bullets left. What? I've never needed more. He pointed toward another tunnel. It leads to the woods. What about you? He smiled for the first time since I'd met him, a tired smile. They're not here for me. Then voices filled the tunnel, calm, patient, getting closer. One of them called out, "Martin, you've saved enough strangers." Another voice laughed, "You can't keep replacing them forever." I looked at Martin. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly closed the heavy steel door between us and locked me on the other side. The last thing I heard before I started running into the darkness was Martin saying, "I'm sorry." Then the gunshots started. The first gunshot echoed through the tunnel like an explosion. Then a second. Then nothing. No yelling, no footsteps, just silence. I stood frozen in the darkness with the revolver still in my hand. 2 bullets. Martin had lied. The gun was empty. I opened the cylinder. Nothing. Not a single round. He had only given it to me for one reason, to keep me moving. I forced myself to run. The tunnel twisted beneath the motel for what felt like forever. Every few seconds, I glanced back, expecting flashlights. Instead, I heard voices, calm, almost casual. "They never get very far." Another voice answered, "They always stop." I didn't. I kept running until I saw faint moonlight ahead. The tunnel opened into a drainage ditch nearly a quarter mile behind the motel. I climbed out, covered in mud, and sprinted toward the highway. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were going to collapse. Then I saw headlights, a state trooper. I ran into the road, waving both arms. The cruiser slammed on brakes. The officer jumped out. He looked at me for a second before asking, "What happened?" I could barely breathe. "They're people at the motel. They're killing people." He immediately called for backup. Within 15 minutes, 3 patrol cars arrived. I rode back with them. The motel was exactly where I'd left it. The neon vacancy sign still buzzed. The office lights were on again, but something felt wrong. It was too quiet. The officers spread out. 2 entered the office. Another checked the rooms. I stayed beside the cruiser. A minute later, one of the officers walked back toward me. His expression was confused. "There isn't anybody here." "What?" "No guests, no owner, no signs of a struggle." I stared at him. "That's impossible. I was just here." He asked me to walk through the motel with him. Room 4. Empty. The chair was gone. The bathroom window was closed. The bed perfectly made. No backpack, no clothes, no phone charger, nothing. It looked like nobody had rented the room in months. I ran to the office. The counter was covered in dust. There wasn't even a cash register, only an old guest book. The last entry was dated 11 years earlier. The name written beside room 4 wasn't mine. It was another woman, traveling alone, reported missing 3 days later. I flipped through more pages. Another missing person, then another. Every few months, always someone alone, always passing through. The officer gently took the book from my hands. "Sir, I think you're in shock." "No, you don't understand. There was a man here, Martin." The officer looked at me strangely. "There hasn't been a manager here in years. The property has been abandoned since 2012. I couldn't process what he was saying. I pulled out my wallet, the room key still there, heavy brass, number 4 engraved on the front. I handed it to him. He frowned, then looked toward the office. There aren't any locks that fit this. The rooms had all been fitted with electronic locks years before they closed. The key belonged to an older building, one that no longer existed. The police searched until sunrise. Behind the motel, they found the rusted hatch, exactly where Martin had taken me. The tunnel was real, but it had collapsed decades earlier. Concrete filled the entrance. No one could have walked through it, not for years. The officers assumed I'd crawled into part of an old storm drain during the storm, that I'd become disoriented, that stress had filled in the rest. Case closed. I tried to forget it. For months, I almost succeeded. Then a detective called me. He had quietly continued looking into the motel after my report, not because he believed my story, because of the guest book. Every missing name in that book matched an unsolved missing person case. 23 people across 18 years. No bodies, no suspects, no witnesses. He asked me one question. Did the owner ever tell you his last name? I said no. There was a long pause. Then the detective sighed. The motel manager in 2012 was named Martin Hale. He disappeared after calling 911. The recording still exists. A week later, the detective let me hear it. The audio was only 43 seconds. Martin sounded terrified. He kept repeating the same sentence. "They're coming through room 2. The dispatcher asked, "Who is coming?" Martin answered, "The guests." Then the recording ended with 2 loud knocks, not on a door, on the office counter. After that, silence. The detective believed Martin was murdered. He also believed the killers were never caught, but one detail never made sense. Martin disappeared in 2012. I met him 10 years later. I still have the motel key. No expert has been able to identify where it came from. No manufacturer, no matching lock, nothing. Sometimes I convince myself the whole thing was trauma until something reminds me, like what happened 3 months ago. I was driving through Missouri for work. Different highway, different state, completely different route. Then I saw a familiar sign, a flickering neon arrow, vacancy. Underneath it, small red letters, Willow Rest Motel. I slammed on my brakes. The exit number was different, the road was different, but the sign was identical. I turned around immediately. By the time I got back, the sign was gone. There wasn't even an exit, just trees. I told myself I imagined it. Then last week, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed the front office of the motel. Standing behind the counter was Martin. He looked exactly as I remembered him. Gray hair, broken glasses, same tired expression. But he wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking past it at someone standing just outside the office door. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting I recognized instantly, were 6 words. I couldn't save the next one. I haven't stopped thinking about those words, because if Martin was telling the truth, it means someone checked into that motel after me. Someone else was driving alone. Someone else saw the vacancy sign, and this time there was nobody left to warn them.